Nigeria Jubilee Fellows Program, NJFP, is an initiative led by the federal government of Nigeria with support from the United Nations Development Program, UNDP, and the European Union, EU, to match 20,000 highly skilled graduates annually with year-long job placements in public and private sectors across multiple industries. The program is open to graduates and organizations that fit their requirements. The NJFP aims to create a channel between graduates and industry to help address this employment gap by identifying the emerging skills that companies need most, while guiding graduates to be more prepared for a constantly evolving work environment. President Muhammadu Buhari, at the official inauguration of the program, said, "An important part of Nigeria's policies and strategies is to focus on employment and creating opportunities for young Nigerians. The Jubilee Fellows Program is therefore initiated to open up new opportunities for 20,000 recent graduates annually." The president encouraged all eligible Nigerians to apply for a place in the program. President Muhammadu Buhari also encouraged private and public sector organizations across the country to join the federal government by providing work placement opportunities, mentorship, and funding to support the program. The NJFP is designed to champion homegrown Nigerian talent and opportunities by connecting organizations directly to graduates. With the understanding that the COVID-19 pandemic has changed our lives in many ways and made it even more difficult for young graduates entering the job market, as well as for organizations looking for new talent, through the NJFP, both graduates and organizations will get a boost in a changing post-COVID job landscape and bridge employment gaps created by the pandemic. The United Nations Development Program, UNDP, is a strategic partner of the federal government of Nigeria in the implementation of the program. UNDP, with the mission to end poverty, build democratic governance, rule of law, and inclusive institutions, as advocates for change, connecting countries to knowledge, experience, and resources to help people build a better life, has been instrumental to sustainable development, democratic governance, and peace building, as well as climate and disaster resilience efforts in 170 countries of the world. In this episode of Diplomatic Ties, we shall be considering the Nigeria Jubilee Fellows Program and the role of the United Nations Development Organization Program, UNDP, in its implementation. My guest is in the studio, and his name is William Suma, Senior Advisor and Program Manager, UNDP Nigeria. You're welcome to Diplomatic Ties, William Suma.
Thank you so much, and happy to be here.
And I'm Nancy Godiamunihu, your host. The program continues in just a moment. Once more, William Suma, you're welcome to Diplomatic Ties.
Thank you so much, Nancy. Thank you for having me.
Now, to give context to our conversation, can you fill us in on the motivation for UNDP's partnership with the Nigerian government to implement this program, Jubilee Fellowship Program?
Thank you. Just first of all, to start off with, UNDP, not just in Nigeria but globally, works extensively with host nations and particularly with governments. In Nigeria, UNDP continues to support and working alongside the government on a number of issues. You've touched on some of those already, in inclusive growth, democratic governance, environment and sustainability. And to be able to achieve Nigeria's development aspirations and its own goals in the development trajectory, addressing the issue of youth unemployment is very critical. It's a development imperative. And as the development agency of the United Nations system, if we are going to achieve sustainable development goals, the goals 2030, and support Nigeria to achieve its own aspirations as a nation that is critical not just for the sub-region, but for the continent, it's important that we start having meaningful discussions on issues of youth unemployment. And therefore, the Nigeria Jubilee Fellows Program is a very, very noble initiative that attempts to address one of the very critical aspects in as far as providing opportunities to young people who are seeking to meaningfully participate socially, economically, and to improve their own lives. And that's really the motivation for UNDP in Nigeria.
Unemployment is actually a great problem there, you pointed out. So in what ways does the UNDP, your outfit, in what way does it align with the NJFP program of the federal government? How does it fit in?
So from a UNDP perspective, our contribution and our support towards the federal government of Nigeria is to provide strategic ways, pathways, knowledge systems, and also partnerships on how young people can be meaningfully supported to access opportunities which otherwise would be very difficult to access. You've spoken about unemployment as a critical issue. One of the biggest challenges that young people face is how do they get prepared to transition effectively from learning to earning. We're living at a time when majority of the employers are looking for experience. Majority of the employers, even at an entry point level, are looking for a certain level of work experience, which majority of the young people, fresh graduates, do not have. What the UNDP jointly and under the leadership of the government is trying to do with the Jubilee Fellows Program is to address that particular pertinent issue, provide very practical work experience to these young people, surround them with mentors and coaches as well, that at the end of the 12 months of a placement opportunity, what they do have then is 12 months, 1 year solid experience that does three things, Nancy. One, prepares them for the job market, which is changing, as you mentioned, with COVID and all. But two, there's also a possibility that these young people demonstrate effectively their talent within those companies and get retained. So it's really job creation at the same time. But let's not forget it, there's also young people who are really looking to be entrepreneurs. And this particular program is just not looking to create employees, but potential employers as well. So how do we provide the Jubilee Fellows Program to nurture the next generation of job creators? And that is really one of the offerings that UNDP is bringing towards the entire unemployment discourse in the country.
Skills is very important here.
Yeah.
How do you find out which skill somebody is, having, the skill that he possesses? How would you know?
And that's a very, very good question. Yeah. What the Jubilee Fellows Program has done, and through the design process, a very intricate end-to-end talent management system has been put in place. So prospective applicants, and just to mention that the application process is open on the 6th of September, which is actually Monday. So prospective applicants are going to be required to provide certain pieces of information. Besides just having been a fresh graduate and having completed the National Youth Service Corps, we're also going to be having specific questions that assess your own competencies as well. What are you passionate about? What is your development journey? What is your professional vision that you do have? What are the things that motivate you, that drive you as an individual? What sort of capacity, skills do we have? Because all of us have got this innate talent, which might not necessarily be influenced by our education. Some of us are good communicators. Some of us are good marketers. Some of us are very, very outgoing individuals. Those are the skills that are going to be harnessed. And our responsibility through the system then is to match those interests and those qualifications to the interests of the organizations. And that is really how to get an all-rounded picture of the individual seeking to get into the program for purposes of matching and then placement. Because what we want to ensure, Nancy, is that the Jubilee Fellows Program really aligns, on one hand, the aspirations of the young person, but also the interests of the host organization, because that makes a perfect match, and that creates an environment for mutual learning.
Let me ask you, why the focus on the young people? Why the focus on the young people alone?
I think there's good reason to invest in young people. First, and this might not even be unique to Nigeria. It's a global, it's a continental and global issue. The population of this country, easily, slightly over 60% is youthful. You're looking at the ages under 30, 35. Majority of them remain either underemployed or unemployed. It is a segment of the population that we cannot ignore. If we're thinking about the future of Nigeria, the future of Africa, the future of the world, it's a young population. And if this population is not meaningfully engaged socially and economically, what we are looking at is untapped potential. The development of this country, the development of Africa, the development of the world really will rest on the shoulders of young people. And that's why it's important for us to deliberately invest in this youthful population. And by doing that, it doesn't mean that we should ignore the other segment of society, not at all. I think there should be effort to also invest in other people who are looking for meaningful jobs, but I think the youthful population is to get utmost priority.
It would actually be good if I ask you, now that the criteria is you have to be under 20, under 30.
Under 30.
Yes, under 30, and you have to be a fresh graduate.
Yeah.
How about the vast majority of Nigerians, unemployed Nigerians who are graduates over the years? How are they going to be accommodated?
And to be very honest, Nancy, we totally sympathize. And that is, and this is not to belittle the reality that there are those who've graduated earlier on who perhaps haven't been able to get a job and who've not been able to access meaningful work. And by presenting the Jubilee Fellows Program, we are also very cognizant of the reality that it's not the only available program. It might not address all the unemployment challenges of young people, but it's an additional facility. It's an additional tool in the toolbox, I would say. But one of the priorities of thinking, the uniqueness of thinking about the Jubilee Fellows Program, Nancy, is that I have just graduated from university, for example, last year. I've completed my National Youth Service. I've got zero experience. Yeah. The very high chance of me getting employment is very, very minimal. And if you look at the numbers of the young people who are getting out of university every year, we're getting figures of 500, 600,000. With each and every year, that is building up to a very unengaged labor force. That does not mean that other instruments and quite a number of programs and initiatives by the federal government and partners that are also providing similar solutions. But the Jubilee Fellows Program is really desperate to plug into this new ecosystem of young people who are recent graduates and provide them with a platform to meaningfully participate and access meaningful work.
It's actually good to start from somewhere.
Indeed.
To begin to solve the huge problem.
Absolutely.
How much of collaboration do you anticipate from the private sector to achieve the targets of the fellowship program? Bearing in mind the fact that private businesses and organizations, they had been they have their own share of the problem.
Yeah.
You know, since after the COVID-19, everything had gone down. They are also facing some problems. So how do you intend to collaborate with them?
And that's a very, very good question. Private sector is really the engine of job creation. The private sector is the future of jobs, and if we are really talking about creating sustainable jobs that can absorb the population that is getting into the job market every day, collaborating and partnerships with private sector is a no-brainer. It is what we need to do. We do recognize, and it's been really, really, the pandemic has affected private sector institutions deeply, and in very relative terms. If you look at small and medium enterprises have been affected extensively, perhaps not as much as the large enterprises, but I think across board private sector have paid a significant price when it comes to the pandemic.
Because most of them are trying to be on their feet now.
Absolutely. But what has been very interesting, Nancy, is that in our engagements with the private sector, they have seen a fantastic opportunity with the Jubilee Fellows Program, and I will give you two reasons. One of them, particularly the small enterprises who have really been affected by COVID, actually looking at this as an opportunity to access talent, which otherwise they might not have the resources to tap into, because we're actually providing them with graduate talent, which if they had to pay out of the job market would have been expensive. They're not having to pay for that. But secondly, for the large corporations, it's also taking away the recruitment phase, which we are actually absorbing.
You're even saving them the problem of experimenting.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
We have to hold it there. We will take a break. This is Diplomatic Ties, and we are looking at Nigeria Jubilee Fellows Program, NJFP, and the role of United Nations Development Program, UNDP, in its implementation, with William Tsuma, Senior Advisor and Program Manager, UNDP Nigeria, in the studio. Now, with many employers, demanding years of work experience as condition for employment, do you see this program making a difference in preparing young graduates of Nigeria for the labor market?
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, I would say that is the very reason why the Jubilee Fellows Program exists. It was a realization that entry-level positions require 2 years of work experience, 3 years of work experience. And what young people are saying is, how do I get that experience if I don't, first of all, get a job? Yeah. Where do I get the experience from? So what the Jubilee Fellows Program is coming in to plug into that same very problem and saying, in 12 months, you're going to have top-class experience working and providing substantive input into a bottom line of a private or public sector institution. By the time you're emerging on the other end of the 12 months placement period, you've got solid 1 year experience. That addresses one of the pain points of many young people. You apply for a job, you're told you don't qualify because you don't have work experience. Where do you get the experience if that opportunity is not provided? And hence the JFP really plugging into that space.
Let's go into funding.
Right.
Funding as in for the program. What will be the role of the UNDP in this regard?
So the role of UNDP, and which UNDP does not just here but in globally based on our mandate, is to coordinate partnerships. And these partnerships are both for mobilizing financial, material, and in-kind resources towards the program. I'd like to mention that the federal government of Nigeria has significantly invested in the design of the program. The program design has been going on for the past 7-8 months, has invested and will continue investing in the program. UNDP has also catalyzed a few resources to complement government's effort. And as you mentioned, the European Union has expressed interest to support and use that as a foundation to attract other funding partners as well. And guess what? Including private sector in supporting the program. What UNDP, one of the significant roles that UNDP will play is that UNDP has now established a Jubilee Fellows Fund, which is going to be a single platform that can tap into both public, private, and even public resources for purposes of deploying and executing the fellowship. And that fund will be managed by UNDP. Resources can be accessed by private sector, by the public sector, by multilaterals, but also even by citizens through crowdfunding models where citizens under the banner of I Am Jubilee can also adopt a fellow and actually see a fellow through a placement process as well. So UNDP will play a role of managing this facility, managing this fellows fund, and managing the fund and ensuring that the effective delivery of the service lines is ensured through very competent and transparent processes as well.
Can you share with us the expected outcome of this program? Can you look at what we're looking at, in the future?
So from a very foresight perspective, in addition to really deploying local, highly skilled 20,000 annual talent into the country's socioeconomic landscape, because the one thing that is so critical is that we need to demonstrate to young Nigerians that there are opportunities in this country, right? That the future of Nigeria is in Nigeria and it's young, right? That we shouldn't create an environment where young people are looking for opportunities outside of the 2-3-4 zone. So that is one, from a visionary perspective. Secondly, what we are providing also is an opportunity for private sector in conversation with government and learning institutions to start imagining the future of work. What are the talents that we need to transfer to our young ones now to be ready for the jobs of 2040, 2050? What we are providing is a very high-level platform where private sector institutions intimately with government and learning institutions start to co-create this future that they'd like to see. If I'm training a young person in 2021, I need to get them ready for the 2030 skills that will be required, which we might not even know about. So that is another aspect. But guess what? Critical as an outcome, and which is a vision that the federal government of Nigeria does have, is to have a model of how to nurture young people to transition from learning to earning. And the best way to do this is learning by earning. It is a rare privilege to be at the place where you're learning and being paid to learn at the same time. And if we can have this model, why not make it 100,000 a year? Why not make it 200,000 a year, 300,000 a year?
So you're looking at that.
That is what, I mean, that's the ambition that Nigeria has.
Actually, lofty as it sounds.
Yes.
Yes, lofty as it sounds. How sustainable is this program?
The sustainability of this program is going to be the major test, and we're talking about the future right here. Yeah. But so far, I could look at sustainability in three main ways. One, government leadership. The government has been very critical in terms of providing the leadership and the anchorage of this particular process and the realization that it's a very critical pillar. In terms of priorities, when the president was launching this program, you could clearly see it is not a small little project that is sitting by the side. It's really anchored at a very high level. It's part of the sustainability agenda and the post-COVID agenda, the building forward better agenda for the country. Secondly, private sector. The uptake of the program by the private sector has been unbelievable. Private sector are excited about the program, and as I mentioned, that's where the future of jobs lie. The sustainability of this program depends on the uptake and the buy-in of the private sector. Third, the young people of this country. For the past several months, we've been engaging with young people in professional associations, in universities.
How have you been finding the young people of Nigeria?
In terms of accessing them?
Yeah, in terms of readiness.
Oh my goodness, unbelievable. I mean, the
yearn for it.
The yearning for it. In fact, just to share a testimony, there's a young person the other day who actually said they now feel encouraged to look for jobs. They're now feeling motivated to go back to the job market. Now,
how else, apart from this program, in what other ways is UNDP collaborating with Nigeria?
As I mentioned at the beginning, UNDP's Nigeria programs are three main core pillars. We have our work on inclusive growth, which links on sustainable livelihoods, supporting policy macroeconomic issues as well, supporting with development planning, inclusive financing and sustainable livelihoods. Nigeria also, UNDP Nigeria also provides support to the government of Nigeria through strengthening institutions of governance and core governance functions, both at federal and state level, in crisis management as well, providing support. I'm sure you might be aware of the stabilization support that is being provided in the Northeast. And then, of course, climate and environment is a key priority for Nigeria, where we're supporting Nigeria to come up with nationally determined principles and actions for managing climate risks and ensuring a sustainable planet, as we say, for people, for planet, and for prosperity. And so these are the main priority areas for UNDP, of which young people remains a significant priority, Nancy.
We've spoken so well, Mr. William Suma. Thank you for coming to Diplomatic Ties.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you for having me.
We have been considering the role of the UNDP in the implementation of Nigeria Jubilee Fellows Program, NJFP, an initiative of the Buhari administration with support from the UNDP and the EU to match 20,000 highly skilled graduates annually with year-long job placements in public and private sectors across multiple industries. And William Suma, Senior Advisor and Program Manager, UNDP, has been our guest. Another package of diplomatic ties comes your way this time next week. Thanks for watching.